Hey everybody, Tim here at today's review of James Bond, movie number 17, GoldenEye. So there's a lot going on with this movie. A lot of people consider this one of the best Bond movies. I liked it. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was like one of the greatest. So at this point, the Bond franchise, like James Bond, had been around for over 50 years. And even the movies have been around for over 40 years. So I think that's kind of interesting, just to kind of like really let that sink in. This is not the first movie called GoldenEye, which is kind of interesting, which is why I actually put 1995 in there. In 1989, there was a GoldenEye movie that was all about Ian Fleming and just kind of his background story. I might do a review of that. I looked it up. There's actually been a couple Ian Fleming background story movies. One had even Jason Connery playing Ian Fleming. So I might do those, but I'll probably wait until after I'm done with all the Bond movies because I'm so close to being caught up. I just kind of want to blitz it out. So the name GoldenEye is actually what Ian Fleming's house was called in Jamaica. So like that phrase GoldenEye has been associated with James Bond for a very, very long time. So I think that's kind of interesting. This movie has the longest window of time between movies, with it being 6 years, which at that time was like just unheard of how long it had been, especially when you go back to like the Connery years and they were pumping one out almost every year, and then it became every 2 years. And now, between Timothy Dalton's last movie and then this one, it was 6 years. Where we're at now, it's almost back to that point. Like, I feel like we get one every 4 or 5 years now, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's just kind of the way movies are made these days. So, Timothy Dalton had originally wanted to do more movies, and watching this one, like, I tried really hard to kind of imagine Timothy Dalton in that position, like, not seeing Pierce Brosnan. And to be honest, like, I love Pierce Brosnan. I think he's a great actor, and I like his Bond movies, but I would have liked to have seen Timothy Dalton continue the franchise for at least a few more movies, if not just one more, to give him like a trilogy. But unfortunately, that's not the way it worked. There was court battles and all sorts of other drama. And then we get to this one. So this is the first movie of the 90s, which I grew up mostly in the 90s. So this is, for me, I was so like distracted while watching this movie by all of the famous actors that kept popping up. Now, I'm sure that happened to a lot of people who watched the earlier movies, and even occasionally, like with Christopher Walken and stuff like that, I would be like, oh my God, that's amazing. But like, it didn't really have the same effect on me, whereas this one going forward is where I actually start recognizing multiple people, and they get some really big names. So as we go through it, I'll just kind of name drop them as we go. So the opening scene was fantastic. I really liked it. And to be honest with you, this did kind of fall on the whole James Bond thing, where I really liked the opening and I really liked the ending, but there was a lot of middle area that I just kind of got a little bit bored in. So the whole opening scene was great, where he's like jumping off the dam. And to be honest with you, like, I already knew it was going to be Pierce Brosnan because it's been like 25 years. But there were like the shots where you first see him, where you don't really see his face. It almost looked like Timothy Dalton, just like the way his hair looked and just like him running past the screen. Or that was just me like projecting and wanting it to be him. Sean Bean makes an appearance. I'm pretty sure this is the youngest I've ever seen Sean Bean. Like, I know he had done stuff earlier than this, but I'm pretty sure for me, this is the youngest I've seen him in. And of course, he dies right away, which at this point, 2019, like, you can't say Sean Bean without making a dead joke, because I think he's died like 23 times or something in TV and movies and stuff. I did think it was interesting that he plays 006. So I like when they start bringing up other 00 agents, and because we so rarely get that. So that kind of stood out to me. I liked the scene where, like, just Bond's whole escape in that scene where the guy accidentally shoots, and then his boss just turns around and shoots him, and then when Bond shoots, like, the lock off and all of the canisters just start pouring out, like, that was a fantastic scene. It was really well done. It was really well shot. Famke Janssen makes an appearance. I am a huge fan of her. She's fantastic. This is not the earliest thing I've seen her in, and to be 100% honest with you, it kind of annoyed me seeing her in this a little bit, because I like her so much. Like, most people probably know her from X-Men. She played like Jean Grey and stuff like that. But before this, she was actually in one episode of Star Trek with Patrick Stewart. And then her character was supposed to go on to Deep Space Nine. And she was going to play the Trill character Dax. But she decided to pass on Star Trek because she wanted to expand her movie roles, and this is like one of those first movies she did shortly after being in Star Trek. So like, as soon as I saw her, I was just like, this is the reason you turned down Deep Space Nine. But she's terrific. She's really fucking creepy in this whole movie, just like being the sex addict and stuff like that. And the fact that she like her name is Onatop, and the fact that she suffocates people by like crushing their ribs with her thighs, and I was like, that's intense. So speaking of her and the X-Men, this has the other X-Men character of Alan Cumming, who, again, one of my favorite actors. He's terrific in just about everything he's in. And I am pretty sure this is the earliest thing I've seen him in for most people. It's kind of the same. So I liked how in this later on we see Alan Cumming and Fromkin Jensen, again in X-Men, they reunite. His character on that is super obnoxious. Like, Alan Cumming does a really good job of being an annoying type character, like Floop from the Spy Kids and stuff. Like, terrific character, really annoying though. And Boris in this, just like the I'm invincible and just stuff like that. Like, he's super annoying, and just all of the jokes about like they're right in front of you and they open really big doors and just stuff like that. But it was great to see him in this. We now see a new Miss Moneypenny, who will kind of last for all four Pierce Brosnan movies, and then, of course, they'll replace her again. It seems like, other than Sean Connery and Roger Moore, where we had the amazing Lois Maxwell, and then we got just the Dalton Miss Moneypenny, and now we have the Pierce Brosnan Miss Moneypenny, and then we'll get the Craig Miss Moneypenny. What I liked about this one, though, is how she flat out says, like, you've never had me before, and kind of puts her in a position of power, and even calls him out on his bullshit, where she's like, you know, what you're doing could be considered sexual harassment. And he's like, oh, could it? And then he just kind of walks away. So it was kind of weird. Dame Judi Dench makes her first appearance as M, which is super interesting and really, like, amazing. She's a great actress. But what kind of, again, makes me a little frustrated is that Lois Maxwell, like, really wanted to play the character of M, and they were basically, especially like when Bernard Lee died, and they're like, I'm sorry, but like Bond just won't take orders from a woman, and she's like I'm already Miss Moneypenny, like just make me M, and they told her no. And now here it is these years later, and now they do have a female in charge. And you can kind of tell that she's new in her role, because they make several comments about, like, your predecessor did this and stuff like that. And it seems like they just met for the first time, Bond and M. But, like, I love Judi Dench. I think she's great. I'm super excited to watch her through most of the rest of the franchise. But the fact that it's not Lois Maxwell really kind of upset me. Like, I would love to have seen her just in one role, even if it was a short film, like a 5-minute film. Like, I would love to have seen her in that position of power. So, but oh well, that's just not the way life works. We finally get a look at the weapon with the electronic surge and just how it destroys that building. And it was kind of annoying because, like, I was wrong, obviously. But Alan Cumming makes, like, his big debut, and then he's, like, instantly killed. And I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. I was wrong. He comes back. I liked how M, so like I said, he tells her, like, oh, your predecessor had cognac, and she's like, give me bourbon straight up. And it's like, okay, shit. So, like, she's showing it. I gotcha. And then she tells him, don't try to get revenge for 006, which is kind of a shout out to the last Bond movie where, like, the whole plot was him trying to get revenge for Felix. So I thought that was interesting. Llewellyn is now the longest running character throughout the entire franchise as he returns for Q. Which, again, I mean, you can get Llewellyn to return for Q, but you couldn't get Maxwell to play M, so, well, whatever. I'm probably never going to let this die down. Like, it'll be 50 years from now, and I'll be like, why didn't they do it? Because that's just who I am. Like I said, so we find out Cumming is still alive and working with On a Top. So like I said, it's that pre-Nightcrawler, Jean Grey thing hanging out. Robbie Coltrane makes an appearance, who most people would probably know as Hagrid from the Harry Potter movies. Great actor. And again, kind of talking about how Cumming and Jansen will work in X-Men together. Like shortly after this, Robbie Coltrane and Alan Cumming will be in the movie Buddy together, which I grew up watching that. That was a great movie. And in that scene, Minnie Driver makes a very short appearance, like as a lounge singer, and it's just kind of caught me off guard because I like had to pause it. And I was like, "Is that who that is?" And this was again one of her like first things. So there's a lot of like first roles or early roles in this movie, and Minnie Driver's fantastic. Although they dubbed her over, which she's a great singer, so it's almost like Phantom of the Opera. How I don't think she did her own singing in that movie, but she's an accomplished singer, so I don't know. It's weird to me. The whole Bond and On a Top sex scene is just painfully like good and bad, where she's like crushing his ribs. I mean, the camera's too high, but she's like crushing his ribs, and he's just trying to get her off, and she's just like literally and figuratively trying to get her off, and she's just screaming, and finally he like sits her on the coals, and that knocks her off, and then she gets pissed off because he beat her. Figuratively. And so we realize that 006 is still alive, and now of course he's the main villain, which once we start getting to this point is where I'm starting to like phase out. I'm starting to get a little fatigued by the whole plot. The whole helicopter and self-target missiles, where the missiles like turn back and Bond like headbutts the eject thing, that was a pretty well done scene. Like this is showing some of those 90s graphics that, I mean, they couldn't really do back in the 60s and stuff. So it's interesting to see how like just film editing has changed in 6 years since we last saw Bond. On a Top gets a last squeeze in, like getting killed by the helicopter. The dish coming out of the water and the water like draining was actually really well done. Probably for me, to be 100% honest, the most intense scene was just Boris playing with the pen and doing like 2 clicks, like playing with it, 2 clicks, playing with it. And like I was like, oh my god, like what's like, I was just couldn't handle it. Like for whatever reason, that was the most anticipated scene for me. And then finally when he does it and Bond knocks it out of his hand and they run. The fight on the ladder was terrific, where Bond actually drops. Although, like, I don't know, like I'm sure he's really strong, but that fast of momentum, there's no way he would have been like able to hold onto the ladder. He would have fallen off. But the whole fight was great. And then, like I said, Sean Bean has his obligated tragic death of like falling off, and then Boris gets basically what was coming to him, and like I don't know how I feel about it, where like everything falls around him and he stands up and is obnoxious again, and I am invincible, and then all of like the frozen CO like pours on him and freezes him. Like this, it's sad to me because he probably died instantly, and like it would have, as fucked up as it is, like I would rather have seen him like tortured a little bit, like just be in some pain for being that obnoxious of a character, rather than just put out of his misery. I mean, that's basically what they did with the Sean Bean character. Like, first they beat him up, they threw him off the ladder, he's still alive, and then finally they drop something on him. Like, I wanted something like that for Boris, but whatever. So, overall, I would say it's a good movie. I did really enjoy it. Not my favorite, not really anywhere near my favorite, actually. But I did really like it. So for those who have seen it, what did you guys think? Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for going into a new Bond era with the Pierce Brosnan years. And I will see you guys next time for Tomorrow Never Dies.